Hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 257 of the Wannabe Clutter-free podcast. On today's episode, I am chatting with Amy Slenker-Smith, a decluttering coach, author, and the creator behind Simply Enough. If you ever felt like your home is too full, your schedule is packed, and your mind is just plain overloaded, this conversation is going to feel like a breath of fresh air. Amy has an incredible way of breaking things down into simple systems and mindset shifts that actually stick. We agree on so many different things, so I know you are going to love her too. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Becoming Minimalist, Redfin, and more, and it's easy to see why. We talk about what it really means to live simply, how to let go of the idea that you have to be motivated to declutter, and why the concept of enough can be so freeing. Before we dive in, though, just a quick reminder that if you enjoy this episode, please go ahead and hit that follow button or subscribe button so that you don't miss out on the powerful episodes we have coming up. And thank you again for being part of this incredible community. If there is something you want me to cover, or you have a question about decluttering, organizing, or simplifying your life, come over and say hi on Instagram. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free, or you can join our private Facebook group, the Wannabe Minimalist Family. And of course, you can get show notes for today's episode by going to wannabeclutterfree.com/257. Again, that's wannabeclutterfree.com/257. All right, let's get into it. Well, hi, Amy. Welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free. How you doing today?
I'm great. And yourself?
I am doing well. I'm excited to have this conversation because we're going to just talk about the things I love to talk about, which is creating lives that we love, simpler lives, ones where we declutter and organize the things in our lives so we can actually focus on what matters. But before we jump into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have Amy Slenker-Smith, in case you missed what Deanna said. I have a little space on the internet called simplyenough.net, and I am a decluttering and life coach. And so I've been doing that since 2016. I mostly work with empty nesters, working professional women, a lot of them, peak of their career, still kids in the home, maybe getting ready to launch kids out into the world. And so I help them with the transition of usually the accumulation of stuff through those years to, oh my gosh, this is taking over. Now, how do we get unoverwhelmed? How do we manage the overwhelm? How do we get back some time? Because they can see that time is just flying by. Maybe they're getting ready for considering retirement or a move or, like I said, launching kids. And so that's most of what I do from my space, and I love every minute of it. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. And one of the things you said there is time flying by. And I do feel like the older I get, the faster time goes. And I don't know if that's just a perspective thing or if you just start to understand more about how fleeting time is and how it is our number one resource. But I love what you said there. And also, I think the audience of this podcast generally tends to skew a little bit earlier on their journey in parenthood and motherhood and things like that. But I'm super excited about this because I love the lens of looking to those that are a little further ahead of us so that we can see what's coming, so that we can plan a little bit. Because I have this thing where I said to my husband the other day, I was like, you know what? I think I can do anything, no matter how hard it is. Like, it doesn't bother me how hard something is, but what really drives me crazy is the not knowing. Like, that's the hardest part for me, is that the not knowing how long something's going to take. How difficult is it going to be? If I know it's going to be super hard, I can prepare myself. Like, mentally, I can be like, okay, I know what I'm in for. But if I just have no idea, it makes it a little bit harder. So I'm really excited. That's all a long way to say that I'm really excited to have you here today because you are just a little bit further on that journey and you can help us see a glimpse into the future. What do we have ahead of us? Sound good?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Happy to be that person for you and for others, for sure.
Yay, I love it. Okay, so you have worked with a lot of people who feel completely overwhelmed, right? They're overwhelmed by their clutter. They feel stuck. You already mentioned that a little bit in your intro. What is the mindset shift, or the first mindset shift maybe, you recommend to help people help move them from that idea of feeling stuck to actually taking action?
Yeah, I think where they're stuck is it is the overwhelm of everything. It is maybe it's their husband's hat collection, and it is the kids' toys, and it is the sentimental stuff that we're storing in the basement but not sure what to do with, but not sure we're ready to let go of. And I think the mindset shift you need is realizing that you can't tackle all of that at once. And you've got to start somewhere. And so part of what I tell people is you have to simply start. So that goes along with my simply enough. We just have to simply start. And starting with your own stuff and setting aside the kids' toys, setting aside the sentimental stuff. We'll get to the garage full of tools that your husband has collected. But when they think about all these things that they don't have control of, I think that's where the overwhelm comes in, or I know I'm not ready to let go of grandma's china yet. I'm not ready to do that. And so don't start with that. Start with your own stuff. Start small and start in spaces that you use daily. And when you see some victories, there's a client I talk about all the time. She had, and I think this will resonate with your listeners, she had young children at the time, and her daughter would only eat breakfast with the pink spoon. And they couldn't get out the door unless she'd eaten breakfast with the pink spoon. And the silverware drawer was full of many other spoon choices. But when they couldn't find the pink spoon, this is how their day began. Poorly. And so she said to me, you know what? I finally had it. I dumped the silverware drawer. I got rid of all the spoons that no one liked, that we weren't using, and I made it really easy to find the pink spoon. Now, she had a few others. We didn't get down to just one spoon. But the idea that fighting to find that one item each day was causing her to get in the car late, take the kids to school, get them there to school or daycare late, her getting to work late. It was just the beginning of a terrible day, and they hadn't even left the house yet. And so when I say start small and start in spaces you use daily, when you can fix something like the pink spoon and it can transform your morning to this calm and this peace, and everybody is well fed, and there's maybe a little margin in the schedule, there's a little buffer. Oh my gosh, we got to school early, you got to work early, you can pour a second cup of coffee. I think you can pretty easily see the contrast between the two starts to the day. And to answer your question about that mindset shift, I think that's the way to start, because then you are just laser focused on what you can control and where you can actually make progress. And it becomes a lot less overwhelming. And as you've mentioned, I'm a few years into this journey, but I did a lot of this work when my son was very young. Like, he was in daycare and preschool when I downsized 70% of my possessions. And when I think about the journey I started on and where I'm at now, I still have stuff to get rid of, which sounds like I've done a terrible job. It doesn't mean I've done a terrible job, but I say that because I'm like, hey, I'm 19 years into this minimalist journey. And if I still have some spaces that I'm maybe going back through again, or I'm maintaining, if I still have spaces, then I promise that you still have stuff to do of your own. It's just really easy to see everybody else's stuff before you start to deal with your own. So hopefully that answered your question.
You said some really great things there in that answer. And here's the thing, I struggle with some of that too, right? I struggle with I want everything done immediately. And yet we have to make a plan, because as you were saying, that's where the overwhelm comes in. We're overwhelmed when we try to do too much at once. We only have so much time. We only have so much energy. We are all extremely busy. Those that are listening to this, I know they are. They have kids, they've got jobs, they've got lives, they've got stuff going on. And we can't just turn it all off and wave a magic wand as much as we wish we could. So as you started that answer, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel this. I feel this so much. But I love how it ended up coming to, I agree with you on It has to be something where it makes an impact on your life. And if we can start there, then you will free yourself up. You will create a little more margin. Now the mornings are better, so the day is better. So by the end of the day, she has more energy. So she can maybe tackle one more area. And then that will free up a little more margin. And so I think that's just wonderful how you said, look, you're going to face this idea that you want to do it all. I get it. When you get frustrated, like, this is it. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm done. I got to make a change. I am one of those people that's, we're doing it all. But then I also have to reel myself back in and be like, nope, you can't at this moment, this precise moment in time, you cannot do it all. You will eventually be able to get to all of it, but you have to make a plan and do it. And I love that you're saying, just start in one place that makes the most sense for you. So yeah, bravo. That's awesome.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
So your framework at Simply Enough, it helps people save time and reduce that overwhelm. Can you just walk us through what the framework looks like, just from a high level, so we can understand how it would help people create lasting change?
Yeah, and it has a whole lot to do with that start small and start in spaces you use daily. And when I'm working with my coaching clients, what I will tell them is for any space they are tackling, big or small, some are very early on in the journey where we're working our way through these main living areas, we're maybe in the kitchen and the family room. Some of them are further along where they're actually tackling an entire storage room in the basement or the garage or something like that. And so I have this Simply Start system is what I call it. It's super simple. It is remove, reduce, return. And you can't skip any of these steps, especially the remove step. So giving you a little window into that, it's probably the one that people want to skip the most, because even if especially if they're doing a little space, let's just take a linen closet. It's like, oh no, we're using all that. Oh no, that shelf looks pretty good too. Well, maybe we could get rid of a few towels. No. We take it all out. And it can be one shelf at a time. It can be one drawer at a time. It doesn't have to be the whole closet all at once. But the remove everything step and view it in a different light is a game changer, because you find things tucked in the back that you didn't know were there. You find things you didn't know you still owned. You realize, gosh, we actually have 18 towels and there's only 2 of us living here. You just start to see things in a different light. And so we bring it out into the light onto a work surface is what I always encourage them to do. And then the reduce step is what you would expect. This is, deciding for a household of 3, like, how many sets of towels do we really need? How many guest spaces do we have? That's when we start to put some math to it to make it more objective. Because I think one of the hardest things about deciding what you want to keep and do you love it or does it spark joy is all of that is just so subjective. And I like to give as much objective criteria whenever I can. And so something like towels would be a place where we use some math and a formula around how you do that. And then the return step is where I always encourage my clients to make sure when you're returning it that there is some margin, that there is some empty space, that there's some buffer, because maybe you buy a new towel or 2. Maybe you need some room to grow. Maybe you've got 3 containers of sunscreen because summer is coming. So you always need a little margin, because we don't live in museums. We don't live in a Pottery Barn catalog. We don't live in a space that doesn't shift and change. And so in the way that you return things to that space, I want it to be a space that can be dynamic, where you can actually see yourself taking the items out, putting them back, using what you need, and not repositioning everything so precisely that it only looks beautiful on that day but doesn't actually serve your family. And thinking about kids too. Obviously, it's a little different with just my husband and I and an older child who's capable of managing more complex systems. But when he was young, I made sure that there was just a box or a bin in the garage, and all you got to do is throw your shoes in it. Like, just aim for the box. There's no neat shelf. There's no hanging them on the back of the door. It's keeping the systems really simple for the audience that you're trying to meet. And so hopefully that helps, some of your listeners. As far as kids go, sure, my systems are a little different now because I have a young adult. But when he was young, we we actually tried to make sure there was more margin and more buffer and make the system even easier. And usually that meant reducing a little bit more. And that decluttering step is super important. So hopefully that answered your question too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's great. The making it work for your audience and having it grow with them, right? Like they're learning as we're learning and we're doing these things together. So the easier we can make things, the more buy-in we're going to have, the more compliance we're going to have, and it will get easier. And then there was something you said there about living in a museum or living in a Pottery Barn catalog.
Yeah.
I think the difference is those spaces, you're not getting the whole picture. Just like you're never getting the whole picture on social media. They have huge storage rooms. They have huge back stock. They have the Pottery Barn catalog isn't even where anybody lives. It's fake. It's all fake. And then the museum, it's carefully curated. You do not see 90% of what they actually own. You're only seeing that carefully curated 10%. And so yes, I love having that extra margin and space because we're having to not only have all the stuff, but it's all the stuff we own and we're having to manage all of it on a continual basis. We need to understand that we have to live within the space confines that we have. Unless we do want to go out and buy storage units, which I don't, and I know you don't recommend doing unless it's for a temporary situation. So absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking too, to one of my clients who had young children, and I with folks who are in my area, I will sometimes do a site visit or I'll come and do a coaching session in their home. I coach people all over the country and I wish I could go into everyone's home. But for those that are local, just full disclosure, I can do that. And recently I did a walkthrough and it was a little boy's room. And what I pointed out to them that it was interesting that I could see it and they could not. And then eventually they couldn't unsee it, which was excellent, was the amount of furniture that was around the perimeter of the room to store all of the stuff. And so there was very little room for him to play. There's very little room for him to sit on the floor and read books or play with toys or things like that. And yet they still felt they had a storage problem. And I pointed out like all this cabinet and this cube system and the closet and the desk. And I said, you've brought all the furniture that could possibly fit in this room into this room. And you still don't have enough storage. I'm like, so what does that tell us about what the solution really needs to be here? And they're like, it's too much stuff. I'm like, yeah. The furniture is so often, I think people go out and they try to buy organizing tools. They try to buy more bookshelves and more cabinets, and they think that's what's going to solve the problem. And it is the exact opposite. And so we started removing strategically pieces of furniture and started really questioning some of the stuff that was living in there, and come to find, some of mom and dad's stuff is living in there that they hadn't dealt with just yet. We've all done it. Like we've all cannibalized our own kids' closet. But getting them to see that space differently and removing two huge pieces of furniture and just the lightness that created in the room, the margin that created in the room. Now you can mess things up, you can play with toys, and it's easy to put them back because we've reduced the volume of literally everything in that space and removed furniture too. I think that's something that people don't often think about, is the idea that removing furniture will help solve the disorganization. It feels counterintuitive, but it's actually a big part of the solution.
So true. And yes, that is very counterintuitive, right? I want to get organized. I need organization things. I need things to organize my things. Well, perfect, because that actually leads me right into my next question, was that we often think that to be more organized, we need more containers and space. So this is exactly what I was thinking about, because your approach focuses on enough. So as you were saying, like we've already talked about getting rid of that big piece of furniture. So what does enough really mean in a decluttering context, and how can we use that as a filter for what stays in our home?
Yeah, so I have a couple ways I want to address this question. I love it, by the way. I love the question. The first thing that I like to do with people is, as I'm getting to know them, as I'm getting to know their circumstance and their life, because the decluttering and life coaching all roll up into one, is what are the things that are important to them, that they're saying are important to their life? What are their values? What are their filters? Like, we dig into that first, and then we start to look at, does their home support those values? Does their calendar support those values? The minimalists say, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And so, do your priorities and your values actually match what's in your calendar? And in terms of enough, I think the answer is, for everyone, it depends. And it depends on those values and those filters that you apply to your own life. So the example I like to give quite often is that I own some things that make sense to me. I own skis. I own ski boots because I'm on the mountain 40 days, ideally, every year. And that makes sense to me. That means I should own skis. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean as a decluttering coach, I'm going to coach you on owning that particular item. What I'm going to do is coach you on owning the items that really serve you and your family in this season. And that's the part too that I think we get a little sideways on. We have these aspirational identities. Amy, I want to be a skier, but we don't have time right now. Or I want to be a crafty person, but I don't have time right now. And so what is it that those filters and values are? And then how do we make sure we're making the time for that? Because I'm in full support of you wanting to ski 40 days out of the year. That sounds lovely. I'm in full support of that. But does your calendar support that? Is your calendar sending that same message? Are the things that you're saying no to enough? Are you subtracting enough? Are you subtracting enough physical stuff from your home so that it's really easy to maintain and clean your house and you can ski on Saturday? Or is the stuff so much it's preventing you from doing all those things that you said were really important to you? And so I think enough is a different answer for a lot of people. For me, I'm always chasing less. I think that when I started doing this, when Zach was young, I was just looking for every little pocket of time, whether he was napping, whether my husband was working late, and I'm not much of a TV person. So to me, that was just a whole evening to just dig into a closet or something. And all my Facebook memories tell you that this is true, that these little pockets of time, I just started putting those all together because the idea of living with less and less and less is contagious. Because I saw the space open up in my home. I saw that we had these big pieces of furniture that were empty, that we didn't need anymore. And I saw all of this openness and margin get created in not only my home, but my calendar. And that's what I want for people. That's that feeling that it's really hard to explain until you start doing it. And until there is this new lightness, you're looking around your home going, yeah, that's those empty shelves. I really like those empty shelves. My eyes can rest. Empty spaces give our eyes a place to rest. And so enough is a different answer for everyone. For my family of 3, it will be different than for a family of 7. But I don't think it's as much as you think it is for a family of 7. I think there can still be a lot of similarities to a small family. So hopefully that was what you were looking for there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You mentioned this subtraction, and I think I've read the book called Subtraction. It was a fantastic book. What I think is very interesting because it does talk about how our immediate gut reaction as humans is addition, not subtraction. And so it's in the book, he mentions this idea of a Lego bridge or something. And it's like, how do you make this better? And immediately, most people's reaction is to just add things to it to make it better. But like the best way to fix the bridge, I think, was actually subtracting a couple pieces, like scientifically, like they created this experiment. And so it's just so interesting that it's not our knee-jerk reaction to go to. And so how would you, since you mentioned subtraction, do you have any tips on like how to get people to switch that, just that little lever of, okay, do you have a question people can ask themselves? If I'm not trying to add, what can I take away, kind of a thing?
I mean, I think it's really like if there is a space that isn't functioning and we've taken everything out, like how little can we put back? What are the things that we absolutely need in this space? If this is prime real estate in our kitchen, let's say it's a kitchen cabinet that is of most importance, like how many coffee mugs do we really want to put in here until this becomes the Leaning Tower of Pisa? Or maybe we just need everybody's favorite coffee mugs. So what I like to encourage my clients to do when they're working in a space is to experiment with less. And so I think because that subtraction is not our natural go-to, I think that when you experiment without it and see that it works, this is what kind of proves it to your brain. In the instance of the coffee mug cabinet, okay, why don't we, if there's 20 coffee mugs, how about we put 10 back and we box up 10 and just wait a month. See what 30 days looks like. Was it easier to do the dishes? Was it quicker to unload the dishwasher? Did anyone miss the coffee mugs that we got rid of? Do you want to trade one or two out? Just did this serve our family and our home in this season right now with 10 coffee mugs instead of 20? And so experimenting without some things, and you can apply this to so many different categories. You can apply this to clothing, could I borrow something instead? I think that's where I like to help my clients to think about things differently and to think about adding as a last resort. Like, how do you make shopping and buying the last resort and approach solving a problem differently? And definitely counterculturally. It's so easy to just one-click the solution. But how do we solve the problem differently? And probably in a better way too. I am known in my neighborhood for being the lender and the borrower. So we borrow coffee mugs and folding chairs and folding tables and wine glasses. I don't think there's ever a wine glass or a coffee mug emergency that can't be solved by borrowing from my neighbor. So I'd much rather do that and store fewer in my home 365 days out of the year. So I went off a little bit on that one, but hopefully that was helpful.
I love it because I went off script on that question too. And just because it came up and it just made me think, let's help people with that switch, because that switch I think is so difficult when you've never done it before. And yet if you can start to practice it, and if you can start to just have a pause before you hit that one click purchase and think, is there another approach? I do think that solves a lot of problems for people, but we've just never approached it that way. So I love it. Thank you. No, I think it's great. And I love that you borrow from your neighbors. What a wonderful way to form connection too. And now when we need more connection with people, when it helps us to have these communities and our local communities, what a great way to be able to do that. So fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't do it without them. So it does do exactly that. And I didn't mention that, but I'm so glad you brought it up. I mean, it's not just about lending and borrowing the stuff. It's about creating a community where sometimes it's hard. Some neighborhoods can be very transient, and borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbor is not quite as commonplace as what it used to be. But I wouldn't trade that for the world. And so we have big things and little things that we have borrowed and lent, and it's inspired other people to do it, making that subtraction idea a little bit more commonplace and not quite so countercultural.
Yeah, I love that. And you say neighborhoods are transient. Like, we rent, and we've only been here, I think we're going on our 4th year in this house, but we know all of our neighbors. Like, I'm clearly an extrovert, but maybe it's just you need to be that first domino too. So get out, go say hi to your neighbors if you can, go meet them if you can, invite them over for coffee and start to build that community. I know this is totally getting off, but we can do it. Like, I think we can do that.
Yeah, and Deanna, just to foot stomp that a little bit further, since we've gone completely off topic and we both love this discussion, so we're just going to stay with it, is what I have had a number of my clients say, Amy, you keep telling me to borrow from my neighbor. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't talk to them. I was like, someone has to start. And I promise if you start and you ask them for something, if they have it and they have the ability and they're not using it, there's like a 99% chance that they're going to say yes. And then when they need something, they're going to ask you. So somebody just has to get the ball rolling. And I think it's completely okay. The worst they can say is, no, I don't have one. I wish I could. It's in use right now. No problem. You've started. Like you've just started like that conversation. And then we're getting out of this idea that we have to own everything. So coming back to the margin and the owning less is that we don't have to own everything. I own the snowblower and everyone else can borrow it. My neighbor owns the wheelbarrow, so I can borrow that. And we don't have to own everything. And that's what the community piece does. It saves us money, it saves us time, it creates more connection. It's just endless, the benefits of the idea of borrowing from your neighbor. So I'm glad we went down that path.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I think for those that are nervous about it, right? I can't do that. If your neighbor came and asked you, what would you say? Like, you likely wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, why is this person on my doorstep? What are they thinking asking me for help? But we go into that moment of thinking someone's going to react that way to us. But if you just take a minute and think about how you would react if someone asked you, it's likely open and inviting. And so you're like, okay, just ask for something small too. You never know, right? So just start something small. I love it. So great. So great. Okay, let's get back on track. Let's talk about this idea of systems, because I think we have skirted around them a little bit with this, how we maintain. We've both used the word maintain and different things we do. So I think when people think of systems, they get a little overwhelmed because they sound great in theory, but a lot of us feel we can't maintain them or keep them up. So what kind of systems do you recommend that actually stick for busy families, and how simple can they really be?
I think they can be simple, and I think it starts with, for whatever space we're talking about, drawer, cabinet, one shelf, what's the definition of that space? Like what lives there? Have you thought about what items live on every single shelf in your kitchen? Have you thought about what lives on each shelf in a linen closet? And how thoughtful and intentional have you been about it? And most of us aren't, unless you're me, and I have defined every single cabinet in my home, and that's a little over the top, but you get the idea, like defining the space. And if this shelf is for coffee mugs, then how many fit here easily with margin? So if it's 6, then we own 6. If it's 10, then we own 10. How many towels easily fit in the linen closet? So it all comes down to defining the spaces that we have and then respecting the boundary instead of letting our stuff become the boundary. So I think we do it backwards, where, well, I own 3 drawers worth of food storage containers or Tupperware containers, so I have to make them all fit in here. But do you? Could we just define one drawer for Tupperware containers and keep that many? And then when the drawer starts to get messy and it's accumulated a few throwaways, we'll just go through it again. It's a quick remove, reduce, return, and it's back to the way it began. So for me, systems always begin with defining a space and defining what is going to live there, and then relocating the stuff that doesn't fit that definition, and then respecting what the boundary is. And we talked a little bit about it earlier. With kids, it's that boundary might be, okay, for my son, we had his clothing in baskets on shelves, and the basket could hold maybe 6 or 8 pairs of shorts. And so that's all the more we tried to keep there. And for the frequency of us doing laundry, that worked out just fine. But once that basket started to overflow and the boundary was no longer being respected, then it's complete chaos. And if all of his clothing containers were like that, then the whole closet was chaos. And so that's where I really start with all of my systems is what's the definition of this basket is shorts and this one is for socks and underwear and so on and so forth. And then what if we decided about that boundary? We've now decided this is the boundary. And so how do we reduce the stuff to fit in there easily and be maintainable where the system can actually work? So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I love the idea of like, once that boundary, you said, once that boundary is no longer there, it almost gives your brain carte blanche to say, none of it matters anymore. I get to do whatever I want. None of it matters. Pure chaos. And so, yes, just having that moment of, okay, maybe we need to reset, and that's okay. Like things got a little out of control. Maybe we need to learn something from this. Are there things that maybe they've outgrown, or let's take a moment and recalibrate and focus on the favorites. And so, yes, I love how it's just that one moment of like, as soon as it goes over, it could be, all out the window. So yes, let's keep it simple, but let's maintain it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think too, just thinking about your audience, Deanna, as we were talking about the kids' clothing and they might have outgrown it and things like that, a system that we put in place from the time that my son was very young is we had a twice a year time that we would go through the clothing. And he was so used to it that it just was routine. It didn't become a big ask. He came to expect it. So typically over winter break from school and then also in summer. So twice a year, we would go through his clothing. And honestly, just last week, as I was talking to him and he was leaving some things here that he doesn't need to take back to school because he's getting ready to move home, I was like, hey, buddy, I said, what do you think? We'll go through your closet again when I get home? Oh, yeah, Mom, let's do that. So he's so in tune with it. And he likes the way his closet feels and how manageable it is for him. And he's been practicing this system for 18 years. So taking it to college and putting it into practice when he needed to maintain it himself, that's a part of what I think I've been teaching him, not just the other things that we teach our kids and we help them with their schoolwork and whatnot, but teaching them how to live on their own and develop these systems for themselves. The last funny story I'll give you is a couple years ago, as he was preparing for finals in high school, he said to me, Mom, my closet, I can't take it. And I was like, buddy, I get it. I said, I give you permission. I said, I know a lot of things had accumulated from different activities and sports, and he'd gotten too much clothing at Christmas time, and we hadn't done as good of a job of going through things. And I said, buddy, you just close those doors and you just ignore it, like for the next 2 weeks, and you just focus on school and you focus on those finals. And I said, and as soon as it's done, I will help you whip that into shape, and it won't take long. But I thought that was very telling that he likes the order. And so many people tell me, oh, my kids don't care about order. They live in it. It doesn't affect them. They like disorder. And I think some of the reason he likes the order is because he knows what's possible. And he knows how quickly it can be returned. He knows that twice a year creates that system for him, and it's easy, and he likes that, and he can maintain it himself now that he does his own laundry and things like that. So I just would say don't discount what you're teaching your kids about helping them to set up those systems, and the investment of time in going through his closet with him twice a year. While I think now he could certainly just do it himself, it is time that we have together. He still pulls me back into it. And I know I'm just setting him up for success as a young adult. And so I think that's something I would hang my hat on that we did right.
Yeah, for sure. Those life skills are so important. And we teach our kids life skills when it comes to money or cooking or laundry or all of these other things, teaching them how to drive. But this idea of stuff too, this is a life skill that we can teach them. And there's stuff constantly coming into our lives. And what you said way back at the beginning was that you're still, after 19 years, going through your stuff. I still am going through my stuff. And it's just because life, we use our stuff, we use it up, it gets worn out, we have to get rid of it, we have to replace it with new stuff. And if we forget that part of getting rid of that old stuff, then that new stuff just comes in and piles on top. And being able to teach them, like, hey, we just need to take a moment and go through it, I think that's so important. So I love that you brought that up. That's fantastic. I don't normally do this, but since we are talking about teaching our children life skills, I wanted to tell you about an amazing resource that I just released. It is a children's picture book, and it's called Lenora and Her Super Duper Messy Room. This rhyming story is perfect for kids of all ages and helps families build healthy habits around cleaning and organizing, practice generosity and empathy, and learn that giving can feel really good. It is getting rave reviews, but the biggest compliment is hearing a mom tell me that her daughters started decluttering as soon as they finished reading together. No fuss, no fighting, just using what they learned and taking action. So look for Lenora and Her Super Duper Messy Room on Amazon, and I will leave a link in the show notes as well. Again, that's Lenora and Her Super Duper Messy Room. Okay, now let's get back to the interview.
Life skills is the right term there. And it is, yeah, we could talk for another hour about all the life skills. So easily.
Well, we'll have to have you back and we'll talk about those life skills. So that'd be lovely. All right. Well, your work talks a lot on being intentional. So, how can we start using intention as a compass, especially when we're emotional about letting go of certain things? I know that's one of the big things that people, to me, talk about is like, well, intention feels maybe too methodical because this is very important to me and it speaks to me on an emotional level. So, how can we balance those two?
Yeah, that's a meaty question. That is, yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like intentionality in everything I do, almost to a fault, is really how my coaching works. It's my own compass for my own life. Everything that hits my calendar has gone through one of my 5 value filters, which is faith, family, friends, health, and generosity. And if it doesn't satisfy one of those 5 filters, I'm gonna think long and hard as to whether it belongs on my calendar. So my intentionality and the way that this is a compass for me is that it's actually in many aspects of my life, but all of it comes back to organization and clutter in my home. And I think so I'm answering this probably not the way you expected, but I think that what I have most learned through my own journey and what my clients learn through their journey is that it's the stuff behind the stuff. And the stuff behind the stuff is, how's this affecting my finances? How's this affecting my health? How's this affecting my stress? How's this affecting my ability to exercise or sleep well or not sleep well or have a good relationship with my girlfriend who I say is my best friend and she's my priority and yet I haven't seen her in 6 weeks? So that intentionality of deciding and taking a pause before I one click, everything I'm bringing into my home has the ability to affect my stress, to affect my health, to take my time away from the things that really matter to me. And so it's coming back to, I think, those values and those filters, not just with the items that we buy, because we think I'll just go get the widget. Yeah, but that gadget's now something that I have to figure out where to store it, and maybe it breaks and then I have to replace it. Maybe it's expensive and now I have to insure it. It just all kind of snowballs when you're doing that time after time. And then when you stop doing that, that's where you start to realize, oh my gosh, our finances are a whole lot better than what they were last month. We've started to be able to, I think with time for us, what we saw was a direct correlation to our budget. Because when I was going through this phase of basically decluttering anything that wasn't nailed down, we were also looking at our finances, because my husband and I felt like we were pretty good with our finances, but we had just taken a personal finance course for couples, and we realized there were some places that we could really tighten up and we could do an even better job. And so the intentionality of reviewing our budget every month, doing a deep dive at the beginning of January, like we have this 3-hour budgeting session where we are pitching and catching, like, could we do that better? Gosh, the groceries were way high last year. Like, how could we do that better outside of price increases? So just the thoughtfulness and the time to do that hopefully is bringing me back around to, I think that when you are more intentional and thoughtful about your stuff, it carries over to so many areas of your life. I am a healthier person now. I had a health crisis through that same season with migraines. I've mostly solved those through diet and exercise and consistent sleep. And so realizing that I was losing a lot of time to being down with migraines, and I was not able to invest in my relationships, and I was burning the candle at both ends by working way too many hours. And so the being intentional about my calendar and my time not only reduced all the stuff out of my house, but improved our finances and our health and our relationships and reduced our stress. And so if that sounds like something that someone wants, you should start with just getting rid of as much as you can out of your house.
Yeah, I love how that took a different turn, but I think it's fantastic and really dove into the whole heart of the matter, right? It really got down to the essence of it. So, Amy, this has been fantastic. Tell people where they can find you, because I know they're going to want to learn more and just continue diving deeper.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, like I said, my little space on the internet is simplyenough.net. A great place to start is a mini course that I have. It's a 5-day email course. So, simplyenough.net/5, the number 5 days. And that gets you an introduction into my style. You'll probably hear a few of the things that we talked about here, but it's really just a way to, if you're trying to figure out like where to start, and this sounded great, but you'd like more of a roadmap, that 5 days, simplyenough.net/5 days would be a great place to start. And I'd love to connect with folks on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, both.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll have links in the show notes so people can just click right through and get to those resources if they want.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome. I loved it.
Of course. You don't get to go yet. I still have 3 rapid fire questions I ask every guest, so you don't get to go. All right. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, number 1, what does clutter-free mean to you?
Empty space.
So good. Number 2, what is making you happy right now or in this season of life?
Well, I just came out of ski season, so that made me very happy. I'm slightly sad it's over, but that's my guilty pleasure. I absolutely love skiing, so I'm just going to pretend it's still ski season and say that.
Well, you must love it if you go 40 days and you're sad that it's over. So that's amazing. I love that. Number 3, what is a goal you have for yourself this year?
Oh, I have a couple of goals. So, gosh, I'm writing a book proposal.
Awesome.
So now I've said it, which is actually really good. So I'm so glad you asked me that question. So I'm working on that. And I'm also working with a local videographer to actually, and I will have a kind of a my story video. It's what they call a brand video, but it's really what I consider like my story, like how I got from when Zach was that baby in a car seat to where we are today, and just the transformation that I made in my own life to end up doing this for other people and just loving every minute of it. So hopefully that was rapid fire answer enough.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's been lovely. I love it. Love all the answers. I love those questions because you always get a little bit deeper snippet into people's lives. And I think it's really fun to see what people are working on. So that's awesome. So thank you so much, Amy. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Wasn't that conversation with Amy so grounding and refreshing? I love how she reminds us that simplicity doesn't have to be complicated. That it's not about doing more, it's more about doing less but better. And when we allow ourselves to let go of the pressure to be perfectly organized or highly productive 100% of the time, we can make space for what actually matters. Amy's approach is a beautiful reminder that systems don't have to be rigid, and they can actually be the very thing that gives us freedom. So I would love to hear from you, though. What stuck out to you the most? Was there something that Amy said that shifted your thinking? Let us keep the conversation going. You can comment on my latest post or share this episode in your stories and tag me. I am at Wannabe Clutter-free over on Instagram. Or you can come join us in the Wannabe Minimalist family group on Facebook and share in there. There will be a thread for this episode and you can share in the community. We would absolutely love to know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating and a review. It really does help the show grow, and it helps me be able to reach more people with this message that you don't have to do more to live an amazing life that you want. All right, and go ahead and share it with a friend too. They might need a little more simplicity in their life, and it will get you an accountability partner, somebody in your community, someone on your team. And we talked about building community in this episode, and that can be both with your next door neighbors or with your friend group. It definitely can help you out as well. All right, huge thanks to Amy for joining us today, sharing her wisdom on simplifying and creating a life that feels like enough. And don't forget, you can get all of her links and show notes by heading to wannabeclutterfree.com/257. And I'll see you back here next week for episode 258 with Kelly Nolan. We will be talking about realistic time management strategies for moms. So if you have ever felt like your to-do list is running the show, you're definitely going to want to tune into that one. Until then, take care, keep things simple, be open to letting go, and remember, I believe in you. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter-Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.